Evening, Martin.
Hello, Andy. How are you?
How are we?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited for tonight's live presentation on SVA Online, and this is an exciting one that you've lined up for us tonight. You want to give us a little bit more information about the presenter who's sitting backstage?
Yeah, so a lot of work's been going on in the background for beach volleyball and our national team programs and things like that. So in partnership with Sports Scotland, we've created a new post, which we are very delighted to welcome Ben Pipes back to staffing for 1 day a week. So yeah, the idea was behind that. It was good to get people up to date on what was going on behind the scenes with beach volleyball and the national team programs and the performance structure. So yeah, let's get Ben out and we can talk about what he's been doing.
Yeah, all right. So, hey, Ben, how are you?
Hi guys, can you see me?
Yes,
we're excited to have you back in the fold, albeit in a new capacity. So what we've got tonight is for you to come on and talk to Scottish Volleyball members and the wider volleyball community about what that role is and what you're tasked with achieving in the period of time that we've got you back. So let's just get a little bit about that. Let's get right in about the meat and bones of it.
Superb. So I've kind of prepared a bit of a kind of PowerPoint for tonight to kind of take everybody through the work done so far, like Martin said, and then hopefully kind of projecting on the work we'd like to do. And obviously, as you said there, Andy, kind of dialing in to the specifics around why I'm here kind of 1 day a week and the work that the governing body, Scottish Volleyball, has done to make that happen.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go with Ben's presentation, and as per usual, we'll be encouraging people to put questions in the comment box, and we'll try and get them asked and answered by Ben as he cracks on. For us, it's an easy fit. Ben obviously previously had a post with us and moved away with Sports Scotland, and now you're back, and it's an easy slide in to that role. So we're going to get Ben to share his screen and we'll crack on with the presentation. All right. Over to you, Ben.
Have you guys got that there, Andy?
Yep.
Perfect. Superb. So obviously from the kind of the outset, I've kind of laid on there the idea of kind of structuring performance. And just like we spoke about there, that is, I suppose, the role that I'm helping to do on this 1 day a week, attached with the kind of the funding that Scottish Volleyball have applied for towards the Commonwealth Games. So my role and my kind of remit in my job at Sports Scotland and how this kind of fits quite nicely is this will be similar to kind of day-to-day work that I do in my assistant regional performance manager role in the west of Scotland at the Emirates Arena. So hopefully it's kind of as much a progression opportunity for me as it is for the governing body. And like you guys have said, it's always nice to kind of come back in and be working with the team and with volleyball once again. So I kind of set out just for this evening, I kind of set out a small introduction around what I'm going to talk about, hopefully in a bit more detail. And like we've said all along, is try and bring some of it to life and then try and project some of it as well and get that engagement with the community and with the athletes and the coaches and obviously everybody involved. So tonight there's kind of 3 key areas that I want to spend a bit of time on. The first one you can see on the screen there is that performance pathway and structure piece. The one in the middle is kind of a bit undeniable, and that's what everything is centered around, is the Commonwealth Games, beach volleyball, men and women in Birmingham 2022. And then obviously, I think naturally with everything that the SVA are trying to do and everything I think we try and do in sport and good sport development is make sure that there's some kind of framework or some kind of future to the plans that we're putting in place, which is obviously really key. So like I said, for tonight, I'm going to kind of focus on those 3 areas and try and take some time to go through them. The first kind of deep dive, I suppose, and the place to start, which is where we're at just now. So if we look at this as kind of areas of work, so these are kind of headlines on the work that I'm currently doing with the SVA, with the commissions. I'll be introducing to the board and then obviously producing a PMG, and then even tonight, the kind of engagement that's been going on in the other kind of sectors with coaching, with athletes, trying to make sure that this was included in there so we can speak to the members and the athletes. So you can see top of the list, probably the first two you could almost put together. I want to conduct, and I feel we need to conduct what I describe as like a situation analysis. So look at where are we right now, and this would cover probably indoor volleyball as much as it does beach, but it's essentially doing a nice deep dive into kind of our volleyball world and seeing what's going on, see what numbers we have, see what parts of the pathway we already have, maybe have a look at our history, because we've been at the Commonwealth Games for beach volleyball in the past, both men and women. So it's about taking some time to analyze what's going on and allowing that information to kind of shape and mold the things that come a little bit further down on the list. The next one down, the domestic and the international competition, that's important because this is about performance. So we're definitely trying to build structure. We're definitely trying to extend pathways. And like we said on that first slide, we want there to be a look to the future. However, there is that kind of ticking clock around the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. So come July, kind of 2022 in Birmingham, we want to see a senior men's and a senior women's team for beach volleyball competing. And we want to see them potentially progressing as far as they did at the last games, or maybe even a little bit further. So we need to know where we sit in that domestic and international kind of competition landscape, so we can start to put some pegs down. And we can start to map out where would we like to get to, what's required to do that, where are the entries, some of these kind of operational kind of questions that we put in. The next one down there, that idea of what are the factors for success, and you can see just to the side of that, I've written in kind of determining factors for future success, and that idea of a what it takes to win model. Working in my role currently with Sports Scotland, and connected to the Institute and working with different kind of sports in Scotland that deal with the Commonwealth Games and athletes on Team GB on a regular basis, it's really important that we know these pieces that add together in order to make a successful volleyball player or a successful volleyball team. And for me, again, for us as a sport, there's a beauty in the fact we don't need to be too strict on indoor versus beach. We have access to both. We can play both codes, and then obviously it allows us for almost a 12-month calendar if we can time it and we can work it right. So there's lots of things to look at from a sports kind of specific point of view, but we need to really work out what are those determining things that will make Scottish men and Scottish women's team at the Commonwealth Games, what will make them a success, and along that journey, what will be the kind of key indicators of success. And then obviously, once again, trying to look for the future, who are we going to bring through, and kind of what are the ways that we'll measure, and we'll look at these teams and determine if they're on that trajectory for success. The next two down are very kind of operational, and they're definitely in the areas aware, but we're definitely not there yet. I've been working with volleyball in Scotland for about probably almost a month now, which seems strange in the kind of COVID world that we live in now. Is the kind of, I've not been to the office, I've not managed to meet up with the staff, but we've had lots of virtual meetings. We've connected in with the Beach Commission. We've established some of that situation analysis and the domestic analysis, and then now looking at that factors for success, looking at that performance and VMOS model. This is where we need that engagement by the current athletes, by the previous athletes, by the volleyball community. We'll probably need to reach out to other home nations. We might reach out to the likes of Morph, or kind of people that we can connect with on that international scale, so that we can start to really get the right answers and make sure that the work we do is evidence-led, and it's purposeful. It's got purpose about the decisions that we're making. So for those that aren't familiar with the idea of a VMOS model, essentially it's your vision, your mission, your objectives, your strategy, and your tactics. So you kind of build up a pyramid, and most people would recognize the model, I think, if you kind of saw it or if you Google it, you'll see lots of examples in a sporting context. But it allows for that kind of shaped and targeted way of working. I think the best example I've seen from this was a lot of people discuss NASA, and I think it was the morning of the launch to put people on the moon. Somebody walked in, somebody was cleaning the floor, and they said, "What are you doing?" And the person answered with, "I'm putting somebody on the moon." So the idea that if you can have that kind of everybody facing in the right direction and everybody agreed on what that vision is and the mission, all of these other little pieces that build up, everyone can buy into that and they can aspire to achieve the same thing. So that'll be hopefully and plan that does what it says on the tin. There'll be distinct kind of markers in the years. So I think at the minute it's safe to say that in 2020, towards kind of between now and Christmas, it's definitely about reinstating volleyball and getting back to the beach, back to playing, back to competition, given the pandemic that we're currently in and COVID that we're having to manage. So there'll be a big emphasis on that return to play, return to international competition within the operating plan for the rest of this year. Next year is likely to start to become about a focus on qualification for the teams, because I'll go into that a little bit later on, but we start to come into the timelines for that. And then in 2022, you're going to start discussing shaping up and sharpening up the teams, either for that final push for qualification or to be ready to compete. And hopefully with the Youth Commonwealth Games now being moved to 2023, we're still awaiting to kind of confirmation that beach volleyball will remain in the roster for that. But having had that moved from 2021 because of COVID, we've also got kind of that for those coming years after 2022. So the next piece of the puzzle that I want to go to. So obviously we discussed there that idea of areas of work. So what am I busy with as a team? What are we trying to pull together? And I suppose where are we at just now as far as that engagement? I think this next kind of section of what I'm going to talk about is an opportunity to really dial in and turn the volume up on the kind of senior performance side of things. And the place where I want to start with everybody is the athlete allocation for Birmingham. So this has been confirmed. So this is shared with us as a governing body, and then we share it also obviously with Team Scotland, and there's that natural collaboration there between the governing body and Team Scotland as well on this. Yeah. But we need to start to kind of dissect and look at the athlete allocation in order to make those decisions around what are we going to put in place, when are we going to put it in place, what will we target, all of these different things. So the simplest way to look at Birmingham as far as getting a Scottish men's and women's team qualified and competing is there are 4 options to essentially get yourself there as a Commonwealth Games Association. So you can see that top list. England are hosting, so they take that host position, and then after that you've got direct qualification, continental representation, and bipartite invitation. So I kind of want to take some time again to concentrate on the 3 that matter to us as Scotland. Obviously knowing that England are going to host. So it does look a bit wordy, and this is the bit I suppose my history coming into this. I've in recent years I've probably worked more with beach volleyball than I have with indoor, especially on a performance kind of point. So I've done a lot of work with the BVF, with the British Volleyball Federation, and with UK Sport around beach volleyball and sit-in volleyball as well. So I've tried to become a little bit more up to speed with the qualification process and the FIB World Rankings. But this is the kind of first line on the kind of list, and it'll be the first thing that will go onto the table in March 2022. On the 31st of March 2022, they'll put the host on the table, and then they'll say, right, they're qualified, and then they'll remove the host from almost every other line on that list. So they'll come down to the world ranking next, and they'll look for the top 5 Commonwealth Games associations. So based on the 31st of March 2022, they will look at that list and they will pick the top 5 men and women to automatically qualify, with England removed from that ranking system.
Yeah.
There's a little asterisk there around that. You can see on that international competition results, January to March, and this is probably hopefully where I don't kind of go too quick or try and explain it a little bit better. And that's why I focus on that next box, is looking at what is the FIVB world ranking. And the focus of that is it's a 365-day conveyor belt, essentially. And every time you go to an event, you put a box on that conveyor belt, and that box contains points that you've won or you've achieved from that competition you've gone in. But they only stay on that conveyor belt for 365 days. So the moment that year has passed, that competition, that box, those points in that box, they fall off. So you're kind of constantly having to keep on your conveyor belt 8 results, and you want 8 strong results in order to be the maximum number contributing towards your FIVB ranking, essentially. So if we keep thinking of that kind of year, you can obviously above there looking at January to March, which is more than a year, but the kind of reading between the lines on the allocation for that is essentially that's the point where they're really kind of paying attention on the teams. What activity are they doing? What training are they doing? And if, for example, there was to be 2 teams in the 5th position, they may go back, they may extend that conveyor belt, and they may look at other boxes on the conveyor belt. So if you've been competing in January and February and you had a few good results in those months as well, and you were joint 5th on the ranking, then they may look at those results, and that may influence whether you're in the top 5 or not. The next one to really kind of understand how the ranking system works is the entry ranking. So the entry ranking is different. That's not your 8. That's your best 4 out of your last 6 kind of FIVB tournaments. So to think about that, that's almost like your ticket to get into events. So you need those 4 kind of results and those 4 strong results in order to get access to kind of unlock a lot of these FIVB events, especially the World Tour. So if I've never played in the World Tour before, and I've never played in an FIVB ranking event before, I will come with no entry points. So when I go to enter an event and I'm competing against another 20 teams for 15 spots at the tournament, they'll look at my entry ranking and decide whether I'm going to make it into the list of teams that would play in that event. So it's not just as straightforward as entering. There's then a process of qualifying into either the qualification round or into the main draw. So the teams with the higher entry ranking will also get into the main draw, which if I bring you onto the next slide, just hoping that I've managed to keep everybody with us and I've not kind of lost anybody watching there, Andy, on that one.
No, I think you're doing well.
Good stuff. The big one in this, and I kind of wanted to put this, and this is, I suppose, this is how I've tried to understand this process in the work I've done with British Volleyball and with the teams there for the Aspiration Fund and the Post-Tokyo funding, is trying to understand if we go to an event, we also need to start to understand what points are we likely to get and where would we likely finish. So you can see on here a rough idea of per athlete, how many points you would expect to get. And you can see on there I've included the Small Countries Association events. Now, as Scotland and I suppose as Wales and as Northern Ireland as well, in that as well, they're very good events, kind of points-wise. If you kind of look for the first, second and third position, and then you look down the lists on the FIVB World Tour events, and you see where you would have to finish in order to get equivalent points, you can quite quickly see that those are events that we should be definitely looking at and definitely targeting, because what the direct qualification route offers us, so basically studying the points, it allows us to kind of track and trace our opponents. It allows us to track and trace ourselves, and eventually you can build systems where you can start to predict what points teams are eventually going to have based on what competitions they're going to play in, what they've tried to enter, what they're likely to get into because of their entry points. And you can really start to get a flavour against these other Commonwealth Association countries where we're at in that kind of race to qualify in a direct manner through points. So boiling this down into probably the I suppose the most palatable way, if I can say it like that, would be for Scotland, we'd like to get as many teams playing in the Small Countries Association events as early as possible. So we get those events, those points would go onto your FIVB ranking, but importantly, they would also go onto your entry ranking points that might then allow you to start accessing FIVB events. So we would start to look at that. And then we can start to plot and we can start to pick which event do I want to go to based on will I get in with my entry points? And also what will I get? What points am I likely to achieve in that tournament to make it worthwhile? Because from your 8 events between March 2021 and the 31st of March 2022, we want 8 boxes on the conveyor belt, and we want as many points in those boxes as we possibly can. And we can start to predict and set targets for the men and for the women around previous Commonwealth Games, factoring in kind of other things that are going on. So COVID shifted the calendar, and at the minute FIVB events, you don't get any points for the World Tour. That kind of freeze has not been lifted yet. So there's things like that in the kind of current climate that we have to look at. But hopefully from that explanation of what the FIVB World Ranking is, so it's those 8 best events in a 365-day calendar. And then your entry ranking, that's your key to unlock the competitions. That's your 4 from 6. And then you can start to see from how you can study the different events to work out, right, if I went there and I finished in this position, what points am I likely to get? And then we can start to track where players are, where teams are versus the other countries, and really get a steer on, are we going to be close to qualifying that way, or are we not? And we'll be able to kind of map that through. So I'll kind of move us nicely on onto the kind of next qualification route. And I suppose a good thing to kind of consider with all of this is, if I was playing on the tour, so if we concentrated on world ranking and we concentrated on FIVB ranking events, then there would essentially be no harm, because the team would be preparing against good opposition, world standard opposition, and you would be accruing the points on the journey. So it isn't a case of just saying, right, I'll do one and I won't do the other. There's a way of kind of dovetailing these kind of ideas in together. So for example, the Continental Representation Cup. So that's the tournament. So last time at the Gold Coast, the men and the women both entered that. The men, that was their qualifying route. So they qualified through that, beating Cyprus at the time. So that's the kind of next natural option, is that you try and qualify through that tournament. But it is a challenge. It's easy to say that the men qualified through that tournament. I'm pretty sure the competition was a lot more fierce than that. And the fact that they managed to achieve it is a huge achievement. It's not easy to go to all intents and purposes, a one-off tournament and perform your best and peak and manage to beat a solid opposition. So it's definitely an avenue to look at, and it's definitely something to consider. But there are a lot of things at play in that. And I said, definitely don't want to take away from the achievement of the last one, making it sound like it's a simple task. It's really not. And you can see on the slide just now, so we come under the European volleyball region for that. So that the teams that we would compete against, you can see in that eligible list there. Now, the interesting one for me on this is England can technically turn up to that tournament. So even though they're the host, they can still turn up to that. And let's say, for kind of argument's sake, that the Isle of Man were currently the #1 team in the world ranking, and they were likely to qualify through that. They could also still turn up and they could play. So the way to consider this competition is that the competition will be played, and then on the 31st of March 2022, the results will be put on the table. And if we go back to that conveyor belt, or that idea of ticking off the lists again, the host would come out of the results. The top 5 ranking teams would come out of the results. And then whoever's left, whoever's the next person at the top of the results board from the regional competition, they would qualify that spot. So you could technically finish 3rd at this competition if you've got the host in your competition, and then you've also got somebody that's inside the top 5 come the 31st of March 2022. So it's about looking at that list and then looking at what to play in. You can see on there that the hosting, there's a definite appetite there from from Scottish Volleyball, and I think from us that we're investigating very seriously for both genders or for one of the genders, that we would host that tournament in Scotland, and we would be applying to do that, and then it would be decided by the 31st of January 2021. So it wouldn't be a long time to wait to find out if we've been successful in hosting either both the women and the men, or men or the women. And then we'd also potentially know by that point as well when the tournament would take place. So we can start to map that against maybe other small country association events. We could map it against FIVB events. And we can start to look at when we need to try and find that peak, which I think for most performance athletes and performance teams, that is part of the trick, is within your year and a half or your year plan, we need to work out when do we need to be peaking in order to go in and get those performance results that we need. So fingers crossed, we'll know by the 31st of January 2021 who's hosting, when it'll be hosted, and then we can start to factor that into our plans. And I think you would quite early on know which of the eligible Commonwealth Games associations from our region are also looking at that tournament and wanting to go as well. So kind of this one's probably the most interesting for me, I guess. And I think commonly we would know this, I suppose, in beach volleyball and in volleyball terms in general. This is your wild card option. And I suppose the reason that I want to spend a bit of time here would be somewhat to dispel some of the myths around the wild card. It's definitely not kind of as wild as it sounds, if that makes sense. You can see from the list on there that this bipartite invitation slot, essentially there's one available in beach volleyball. So one available for the women and one available for the men. So you've got your 5 from the ranking, you've got the host, and then you've also got the regional kind of the top finisher in that once you remove the host and the top 5 from the world ranking 31st of March 2022. For the next one, for this idea of the wild card is an application process. And you can see on there that you need to have done certain things in order to qualify. So it's not just a case of Scotland saying, well, we'd like a wild card. You're going to have to say that you'd like one. You're going to have to apply for one. There'll be kind of paperwork and forms that go with it. And then there'll be a process of evidencing why you're kind of deserved, why you should be in that position. It'll be the Commonwealth Games kind of federation that will look at this. And then obviously the FIVB are also in a supporting role in order to make the right choice, because it's about making sure that the competition is strong. So they want a good Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. They want good representation. They want to lift the profile of the teams and the countries that are engaging in the Continental Cup or the continental kind of representation. They also want the teams that are busy trying to get points. They're trying to play tournaments. They're maybe playing in their zonal events as well. So it's about painting that picture of kind of why you need to be at the tournament in Birmingham, and it allows a little bit of space, I guess, for the organizer to make sure that they're making a strong competition. So last time around, this was the Scottish women. This was their qualification route. So they missed out on qualification direct by points by a fraction. And then it was the same. They didn't qualify like the men did. They didn't qualify through the continental representation. But when it came to the application for the wild card, essentially, the strength was in the work that had been done over the course of a year and a half, 2 years, and definitely in the year running up. So for me, in my position, in that kind of performance position, and like I've said, I think a little bit earlier on, you would never just pick a single route, because ultimately the goal is to get the women and the men qualified for the games. And if you look at the results from the previous games, there's obviously a target there for us to look at to try and improve on. So 5th place for both the men and the women, and obviously a high ranking team position on the women's line. You had the kind of one of the highest ranking female teams at the games for Team Scotland as well. So there's kind of targets for us to have there from a performance point of view. But ultimately, when we boil it down to the games in 2022, we want to see, and we kind of need to see the Scottish teams represented. So that's where, for me, the kind of all of the work adds up. And then eventually, if it's the case that you just miss out on qualification directed by points, and you just miss out at the continental representation, you want to make sure that everything has been done in order to be that kind of right candidate for the wild card, essentially. And you want to be giving them reasons as to why they shouldn't be putting you in there, either as the men or as the women, or just one. So it's, for me, this is actually a place to really concentrate on and to look at this and make sure that we're building a program and building work essentially over the next year and a half, almost 2 years, making sure that that's been done in order to kind of really shine a light on the progress that Scottish Volleyball is making and Beach Performance is making, and how it's capitalised on kind of the history it's got and the way that it's and the way that it's going that direction that it's taken. So hopefully kind of dispelled some of the myths there that it's just an idea of you put your name in the hat and then it's decided that way. It's really not. It needs to be something that we consider very seriously when it comes to qualifying, because ultimately the priority is getting teams there, and the world ranking is not an easy task. It's really not. And like I said about the kind of the performance that the men put in previously to qualify on that kind of winner takes all kind of moment that they had in Cyprus, third set, kind of past points and past time. You want then a fallback, making sure that you kind of someone can check your homework and your coursework and say, look, this team are absolutely the team that we want in there.
Yeah.
So I suppose kind of moving on, and I said kind of happy to take kind of questions on previous slides or kind of on other bits in there. I suppose this kind of section here is maybe just to zoom out a little bit and kind of bring it past that kind of fast focus of 2022, because it might seem like a million miles away, but Birmingham will come around fast, and March the 31st, 22 will come around fast. January and the qualifying tournaments will come around fast. So it's important that we've constantly got a look to the future and a look at potentially where we can take volleyball, performance beach volleyball, how it connects in with the Scottish system that already exists. So how does it connect in with the beach tour? How does it connect in with the junior teams, the national teams, the indoor, the beach? How does it connect in with all of that work and that history that we've got, and how do we move it forward? So I think the bit again for me on this was I've spent a lot of time looking at this from a BVF point of view and with UK sport on the post-Tokyo bid in probably most recent times. So looking at our sport of volleyball, the multi-games options within our sport, they lie kind of probably most prevalent with beach volleyball and with sit-in volleyball. This is from a UK kind of Team GB perspective. So the games, so the Olympic Games, essentially beach can unlock that through the Continental Cup. So it's definitely one of the most challenging kind of routes of qualification, and it's a little bit Davis Cup style. So you've got 4 players over several rounds, and you need to win that in order to kind of get that host nation position. And then you've obviously got the Commonwealth Games now for two times beach volleyball is featured, and it's likely to feature again. And then if we look at the Youth Commonwealth Games, the Youth Olympics, it's the same principle. And then in Munich as well, we've got coming up in 2022, essentially the European Games. Beach volleyball has also been included in that as well now. So as far as the multi kind of sport and multi games options for volleyball in the kind of recent time, what we've got to option and where we can see a pathway that's almost tangible, we can engage with it at least. You've got beach volleyball and you've got sit-in volleyball kind of within that. So for me, I suppose coming from my indoor background, and I think in truth, a little bit my kind of volleyball perspective is it's more likely that as a nation and I guess as an island, we're going to start looking for dual career athletes, because you would never simply pick one or the other. You would look to develop both your indoor game and your beach game, and you would try to complement the two. And then you would try to focus kind of attention on performance outlets, let's say that, or performance opportunities for either teams or groups of teams or age groups, and you try and be kind of purposeful and intent about, we're going to send these players to that competition because we know they need that performance exposure, they need that ability to go and play in these tournaments hundreds and hundreds of times in order to be ready for a moment where they might be able to qualify for something as big as a Commonwealth Games, an Olympic Games, a youth kind of commie games, or a youth Olympics as well. So I think for me, looking at it, and again with that kind of big kind of zoom out and that big lens on, is we're hoping that by building that kind of program in Scotland, that we can target the Commonwealth Games and the Youth Commonwealth Games, both 2022, 2023, and kind of beyond. And I'd also hope that would have a positive impact on the indoor teams, and you'd hope to see them, that kind of working and that collaboration, to then further drive that. And then as we go kind of further down the track, and that indoor team strengthens as the beach team strengthens, is then the indoor teams also start to then kind of seek out even higher kind of performance engagement and trying to build that. So we've, again, I'm talking in my kind of UK BVF capacity, but we're proposing for indoor in that kind of 2028, so between 2026 and 2032. You're starting to look at trying to build on the work that has been done from beach, and that kind of transference, that dual career athlete idea, and building that. And then hopefully that'll be where that profit comes into accessing things like Olympic Games or Silver League or all these kind of other VNL that you've got on the indoor as well. So for kind of right here, right now, it's the perfect place to start, is with that performance, is looking at beach volleyball. And I say for Scotland, hopefully from the presentation you've kind of seen just there, we're starting on that. Well, we're not starting on it, we're continuing that journey from Gold Coast, and we're going to try and sharpen some of the bits and try and lay a bit more of a framework by analysing what's been, analysing where we are now, and looking at really what we need to put in place in order to kind of have that qualification and then that future progression and that future trajectory for the athletes and for the teams. So hopefully you guys can see that. I think I've got a slide there. Not doing too bad there on time, Andy. I was half keeping an eye. So yeah, kind of plenty of time to kind of any thoughts and reflections, and I can come back to different slides if needs be, or kind of just to try and explain some of that again.
Do you want to? There's a question that's popped on from Yvonne Kennedy.
Yeah.
If Blair, you want to pop that on the screen, or there. So Yvonne's asked what kind of funding is likely to be available to assist with the qualification process. Also, is there likelihood of an indoor training facility that will be available for the athletes? Obviously, Yvonne has fond memories of the barn being on TV. I can tell you it was pretty cold, and I know that those guys worked miracles in that place. So I guess with all that we're talking about, Ben, it's a pretty key question.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I think the quick answer is no decisions have been made as to where that spend will go yet. So there's funding there that's been allocated to support this process and to support the athletes in order to qualify, but there's not been any decisions yet. And the reason for that, if I kind of, hopefully you guys can still see my screen, we're kind of very much still, like I said, that areas of work is making sure that we've delivered on that situation analysis and we know exactly where we are and we understand that domestic international competition, so that whatever that investment is, Yvonne, then it's done in the right direction and it's done in the right way. So yeah, the answer will be yes, there will be funding there for the teams to qualify. I'm not sure if it'll include an indoor build, because they are expensive to do. I know that we managed to do it in a barn last time, like Andy said, but it was vital, and there's a lot of work that the governing body have already been doing, and there was a bit of work with the Aspiration Fund, where we've managed to secure some money for facilities as well, at least inland. I'm not sure if it came with a roof as well, but yeah, we'll be looking to determine exactly what that spend is when we've spent a bit more time getting the answers and looking at that. And I suppose the next the other step would be that engagement with the athletes. So we're analysing who's on the tour, who's playing, who's in the national teams, who's got that history of the national teams. But then the next steps as well will be engaging that group and getting them to help us with these plans.
Hopefully, Yvonne, that's got the information there that you were looking for. Ben, I mean, for some folks, this information will be brand new. People who are playing on the tour, they probably won't have considered what it actually takes to get to those games in terms of collecting ranking points and how those ranking points remain on there. So it's a lot of fresh information. For people who are particularly younger athletes, maybe some of the guys who are seeing this for the first time or experiencing this opportunity, how exciting is this process for you in terms of the development opportunities that we're going to get from it?
Yeah, I think for me, this is absolutely massive. And I think the other thing is we're slowly getting better at understanding these processes and understanding how to, I suppose, like what we just described there in the previous answer, is how to analyze and make informed decisions and use evidence, make them evidence-based. So if I'm a young person listening, I hope you're taking confidence in the fact that I think everybody as a volleyball community, we're learning more and we're working in a better way towards these kind of lofty kind of goals. When we talk about the Commonwealth Games and the Olympics, like these are huge deals, and youth Commonwealth Games, youth Olympics, they're massive things to be involved in. I think the bit for me to focus on if I'm an athlete is, I think beach needs to be considered in that as a development tool, and I say that's maybe my opinion as a volleyballer, and I suppose as a coach as well in volleyball, is there's that high volume of touches, there's that unpredictability of the weather, there's that high volume of matches, there's that decision making, there's all of these things that exist in the game of beach volleyball that will either complement your indoor if you've got a bit more of a preference to indoor, or it's just going to aid your growth as an overall volleyball player. So for me, it would be about get yourself on the sand and get playing, get some exposure to it and have a play with it, use it as a tool in order to build yourself as an athlete. And then I think pay close attention to that ranking system and where you can get points and how you can best position yourself for when you're ready potentially to step on to like an FIVB World Tour, or you're ready to go to 6 events in a summer, in the kind of the summer season, if that makes sense. And I think the big one, this was almost never around. I don't want to kind of arc back to in my day, but I think the other thing I think we have to do for the young people is offer support. So I think for coaches out there and for team managers or for clubs, is I think we need to be understanding of what's available for young people nowadays. Like beach volleyball was something you did for a laugh when I was younger. It was about social. It was about just for fun. And none of my indoor coaches took it seriously, which that world has completely changed now. Like beach is a very credible option. You've got dual career for scholarships in the US. You've got prize money to be earned. You've got a lifestyle to be lived. You've got athletes that can complement both indoor and beach kind of playing. So I think as a community, we need to kind of rally around them and make sure that they're safe to access it is the wrong word, but I think that they're free to explore it without kind of that judgment or that expectation. I think is another really key thing we can give to them in the position that we're in.
Yeah, I think throughout the presentation, some of the dates in which you were talking about in terms of the future events, it got my mind racing about, in terms of development. We need our players, our current youth, to be looking at that as a proper career. And part of the messages that we've had previously is like dual sport athletes are probably better, more rounded athletes. So that message is very, very clear here, Ben. If you are picking one or the other, maybe an indoor player should be thinking about getting on the sand and looking at this as a serious option. Yeah,
I think definitely. I mean, it's never a good idea to force anybody one way or the other, if that makes sense. But I think definitely go and give it a try. And I think I'm a big believer in the kind of non-early specializer. So for me, I would almost consider the beauty that you could still be playing your sport, but slightly different, and learn something new to take it in. You're not having to explain to your coach that actually in the off season you want to go play five-a-side with your friends, because actually the creative side of football, you're taking then something into your play when you come into the winter season, for example. You've been able to say to your coach, actually, coach, I want to go play the same sport, but I'm going to play outdoors on the sand, 2v2, and I've got the opportunity to go play CEV age group stuff, FIVB age group stuff, and potentially even unlock a multi kind of sports games, which I think as a person there's huge amounts of things to kind of glean from that, and take into your career wherever it ends up, or wherever you go.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great opportunity. Martin, thoughts on that, having been through it all?
No, I think the good thing for Scottish Volleyball is that there's a clear structure, and there's a pathway for everyone to try and consider. I think previously, because it was new, it was really the athletes who were dedicated at that already. So I think, Ben, just for the athletes out there, who can they contact to get involved in this sort of thing? Because obviously we're going out to national teams and national teams and the clubs, but if they want to contact us directly, who should they contact?
Yeah, so at the moment, Anna has been I've been working quite closely with Anna on this. So athletes are more than welcome to contact Anna in the office and discuss that with Anna, and then that'll obviously make its way to me. The kind of downside of being 1 day a week is the risk is you email on Monday and I don't necessarily get time to kind of see it until Wednesday. But it needs to come in, and I'm hoping, and that was kind of I suppose some of the work that you guys have been doing behind the scenes with a lot of these talks, is it's about stimulating the community and stimulating the athletes. And I'm hoping by seeing this, like what you said there, Martin, is there's something for them to want to get involved with. I'm desperate to have people's opinions. I'm not of the thought that I know every answer. I do love a detail. So like when Andy was saying there about his brain spinning around dates and stuff like that, that's the kind of the bits that I like as well, is we can start to map out the wheres and the whens and the kind of how. But I think the why we're doing this, I want that to be driven by the athletes, young, kind of old. We need kind of the athletes to be driving this, and why they want to get involved, because they're going to need to want to do 8 events between March and March next year, for example. They're going to want to go to Ireland and play in Small Countries Association events. They're going to want to go to FIVB events and potentially turn up and get beaten by high seeds, but then start to craft their career past these points and hopefully kind of keeping them engaged. So yeah, hopefully this is a fair spot. Contact Anna, because it will definitely come to me, and I'm more than welcome to kind of speak to people. And I think off the back of these engagements is we'll be getting that conversation with athletes around, there's still work to be done around selection policies that I'm desperate to get engagement from athletes on, as a kind of form of best practice. So there's a lot of room there. So please contact. I know a few already have as well, so really appreciate emails already starting to come in. It's really positive when athletes are on that kind of front step.
Big Marco's asking there, Ben. You looking for a partner 2022?
Do you know what? I mentioned this to him. He's been on his holidays, and I did. Part of me thought maybe he was prepping himself, playing in Greece. I'm not sure. I'll check the criteria just for Mark, and we'll see. Pack your sun cream.
Oh, Marco, he's got some chat for you, that's for sure.
It's his turn at the end of the month, Andy, so I'll get him back. Don't worry.
Oh yeah, totally. You know, when he hits you out with hard questions like that, then you get a chance to rebound it straight back at him. We're having a look at some of the questions that are coming in. Are we going to go with this one that's come in?
Yeah, let's go with it.
Yeah, so let's have Sean Cook's question. He's hitting us with a hard hit. So at international level, beach athletes are training specifically year-round. How does the SVA see that combining both disciplines will create international success? We are all SVA, so I think we're all looking for everybody to be pulling in the right direction with this one. Sean,
Yeah.
Ben, you want to hit them with a response, really?
Yes, I mean, I think probably the bit for me for that would be we need to recognise where we are just now, and what we will be. So the kind of the pool that we're pulling from, the volume of athletes, the level that those athletes are kind of reaching. So Sean obviously he's got his own international kind of career, both indoor and beach. And he's managed to kind of combine the two. So my kind of personal opinion is right here, right now, is more likely to be a dual athlete. So they're going to be playing an indoor code in order to keep moving. And there are countries that are of a similar level and definitely of the kind of Commonwealth level that will do the same. So players that play both codes up until a certain age. And then if there's a moment where they can forge a career or they choose to forge a career on the sand via sponsorship, via kind of income from winning events, then they're obviously more than welcome to do so. Or you balance the two. Where you potentially got an indoor professional career, and that helps you fund your summer career as well. So hopefully that's an answer for Sean. I think the truth is we need to know where we are just now, and nobody ever jumps to the level where you're full-time, 5 days a week, 365 a year. And there aren't many federations that will pay for a complete full ride for those athletes either. So they're income generating themselves by the money they make on tours or competitions as well, which to be expected to jump straight into earning a living from that, I think is quite a big challenge.
Yeah, hopefully that helps Sean understand what we're trying to create. In terms of the longevity of the programme, Ben, and the development opportunity, Dave Monroe's asked quite a nice question, and it ties into what we're talking about. So, are there any plans for grassroots development centres around Scotland to promote beach for youngsters? I think we've got a couple of developments on the go. But maybe this is something that we would be looking at.
Yeah, I think it's maybe not to be seen in isolation, and there is already work going on. So the kind of courts in Perth, there's work been done in Edinburgh. There's the beach club in the west of Scotland.
Yeah.
Even kind of since my time working with the governing body and then moving kind of onto Sports Scotland, the development constantly continues. I think it's hard for us to kind of see all of the time. And I suppose sometimes it's that it doesn't definitely need to be a beach development. It doesn't definitely need to be an indoor development. It needs to be bringing people into our sport. So more kind of landing spots for people to come and try it, enjoy it, kind of fall in love or see a path to continue on. And then keep going. So no specific plans. I think there'll always be work around events. So if we're going to host small countries events in order to help athletes get points, if we're going to try and host an FIVB event to try and get athletes to get points, there's likely to be development activity going on around it, but nothing specific with this bid.
I think we would like to also recognise that in the years that have gone before here, SVA have been working hard to really increase the level of exposure within beach programme, and that's what was included in the Flying Scots in the previous year, to try and get those kids that are playing indoor, to give them that experience of the beach. I think we've always had a focus on what's going to come in the future, so that's really what we're trying to drive forward here, Ben, that it's not just an instant fix, it's a long-term development process that we're looking to engage. Kelsey Braidwood's asked a really nice question, and she's asking what steps are we taking to ensure that access to performance coaching / programs are available across the whole of the country.
Yeah, so I think this is a challenging one. I think the bit for me, again, there's no decisions on, ultimately in performance you can make a decision on, do you do a centralized program or do you do a regionalized program, which maybe connects in with this question. So essentially, do you have kind of hotspots across the country in order for athletes to go and train? I think the challenge for that is to blend that where you don't have high numbers of players. So it is more likely that with low numbers of players, you're going to be a bit more centralized. So you're going to ask some athletes to have to travel. which I know is kind of from, again, my time in volleyball and from a lot of the good communities in the north and on the islands, that poses a lot of challenges. I think the beauty of that is the first thing that we can do is to recognise that for some it will be a challenge, and then to put measures in order to mitigate those challenges. So is there extra funding available? Is there accommodation available before? Is there support to communicating with employers or with teachers to let them know that they're travelling for national team duty? But I think sadly there is an inevitability around, with small numbers of players, you're likely to be having to come to a place in order to train. I think in the early days, that's probably the most honest answer I can give to that.
Can't really say fairer than that, Ben. The questions are now starting to flood thick and fast, and we're just wondering who's to go with next. Martin, what do you think? You want to?
Yeah, let's go with Ali Jack's questions.
Ali Jack.
Yeah.
So let's have his first one. There you go. He's interested in seeing what our steps, our first steps in the long term are.
Yeah, so I think probably one of the first things, and I know I've kind of spoken to him a little bit about this, probably just more in passing, if that makes sense. But I think identifying what the similarities are between the two games and maybe looking at kind of priorities for benefit. So if you've got an indoor player that's showing certain traits or certain physicalities or certain things, then you might be saying to the beach coach, hey, look, you need to see this guy or this girl on the sand, because they're doing this, and I, as a coach, I recognize that that's going to be a strength on the sand. And I think vice versa is for the coaches on the beach to understand where the kind of positives would be. So we need to kind of better know each other. So the athletes that you've got, so like a Sean Cook, for example, playing indoor team professionally, and then representing Scotland on the sand, or a Lynn Beattie, who's got history playing in the same position kind of professionally and then onto the sand, is looking at what are those kind of traits and those things, and how do you bring it together. I think one of the biggest clashes that I've experienced is the calendar. So and that only gets harder the better the national teams get, the better the players get. And I think that maybe connects in with Sean's point around that would be the moment where you would look at saying, right, now we need a beach program and an indoor program, because actually there's just too much. The indoor team have got the VNL, and they've got the Gold League in CV, and they've got Olympic qualifiers, and I can't keep pulling players out because the players on the sand have got X, Y, and Z. So that's really the balance for me, is coaches, players, parents, carers working together in order to kind of to get over the barriers of the scheduling. That's one of the big ones. And then I suppose the third concern after that is also the well-being of the athletes. Transitioning from kind of soft to hard surface, so from sand to indoor, can be challenging, and there is a bit of a risk there. I know that you guys have kind of spoken on the physical side of the game on previous talks, and it's never going to do any harm to have good, strong athletes that we can be versatile with. It keeps them healthy. It keeps us being able to operate as well.
I mean, a brilliant answer, Ben. I think we're picking up what these messages loud and clear in terms of the physicality that our athletes need to be picking up in terms of their volleyball journey. So another bit of information there that backs up that. Callum Stewart's hit us with a question, Ben, and just make sure, it's all on the screen there. He's asking, if a team qualified through direct ranking or a tournament, do they get the spot themselves, or is it up to a committee to decide who's playing? Ooh.
Yeah. So this is, again, a really good question. So this is the work between the SVA and Team Scotland, and this is about establishing a selection policy. That'll need to be done between now and Christmas. Ideally, the sooner the better, really, because that sets then the playing field for everybody to go and attempt to qualify. So exactly the question there. The reality is, either way, is that you qualify the host spot. You don't qualify as a person. So if I win the kind of the continental representation tournament as a pair, you qualify Scotland. You don't qualify yourselves. So that is often done by your selection policy, and it's done by, I know you use kind of the term committee there, but essentially it's going to be ratified by another group, if that makes sense. So as a player, it's similar to indoor or similar to like a club team. You don't really ever achieve anything on your own. It's for the country or it's for the club. And it's whether you're on the court or sat on the bench kind of thing. It's almost irrelevant. Or if you're in the long squad and you're playing. So the quick answer is, in those qualification routes, you qualify the spot, which is Scotland. You don't necessarily qualify yourself, but the selection policy irons out basically what then the process is after that. So who will go essentially. So it's very rare that you kind of have things in there, but let's say you're missing an essential part of the athlete allocation. It might be that you're not even able to go. So I'll use the Olympics as a really quick example, Andy, and I'm talking a lot here. If I qualify through the Continental Cup, which is a huge ask, so the 4 players make up the Davis Cup team. They qualify. For us, it would obviously be GB. So Scotland play, but GB qualify. There are only 2 players that can go to start off with. So it's not all 4 players that will go. And then if those players have not played 8 matches or 8 competitions FIVB ranked, then they wouldn't even be allowed into the Olympics. They don't qualify to be selected. So there's often little kind of bits in the allocations that need to be thought of. But the best thing to do, which is what we're going to try and do, is engage the athletes, get an early selection policy in place, and then people know what they're working with. If I qualify the team, what else have I got to do to get picked? If I don't get picked and I qualify the spot, who can I speak to? What can I do? It kind of lays all of that out almost as a start line for everybody to set off from.
All right, I think that's good to know, and teams already have an idea of what that process is going to look like. Although we will have a body of work to do between now and Christmas to make sure that we get these processes ironed out. Ali Jacks came back in with another question. I know he does make me smile, but he's asking quite a focused question in terms of the periodization of strength and conditioning and how it becomes more complex if you bring the programs together, working with indoor periodization and outdoor periodization. What do you think on this front, Ben?
Yeah, so I think this is a good one, and it's kind of bravo, I suppose, for the men's team for having a strength and conditioning coach in place, and that kind of work. I would maybe push back a little bit and maybe over a coffee with Ali to see where the disadvantage lies, if that makes sense, or where the challenge lies. It's always, I think there'd need to be more specifics on that kind of as a statement, if that makes sense. Because in truth, it's the quality of the work you do collaboratively. So if you knew the schedules, if you knew what needed to be done, if you knew that individual development plan from a strength point of view for the athlete, I mean, the strength might be there for an injury as well. So it might be about maintaining or kind of avoiding injury as much as making somebody kind of fitter, faster, stronger for really basic terms. So it would just come back to that point of collaborative work, if that makes sense, and then nobody wanting to overstep the actual needs of the athlete. So Ali Jack's example there about that S&C plan for a player that's potentially indoor, and what disruption would that cause if they went onto the sand? The truth is, it would be minimal if there was collaborative work. And I'd hope that there would be a profit going into the winter, for example, if you had that. I think we'll need to look. The only challenge with the beach is looking at, again, on the idea of a centralized program or regionalized, is do you try and make teams and provide them with support services or team, or do you allow them to be their own unit and bring all of that in, for example? Because I know in previous kind of Commonwealth Games, the teams essentially built groups around them, and they had a little bit of institute support, and they had other kind of practitioners helping them out. So you've got that option to let them work on their own, and then make sure that connection's in with in that instance, the men's national team indoor S&C coach, and make sure that that's happening. But the likelihood is that it's going to be multiple people. And again, the better we get, the more collaborative we have to be. Because if your players are playing abroad and they've got their own coaches, different places, they've got their own physical coaches, they've got three peaks in a year that they have to meet, for different people, for different funding, for different reasons. It's kind of a position you want to be in. So now's the time to get it right, and to start practicing getting it right with that collaborative working.
Perfect. And guess who's back with another question?
Gotta be Ali. Is it Ali Jack again?
It's Ali Jack again.
Come on.
He's for most folk who maybe know Ali, but really not where he's at right now. He's going down this very learning journey, and he's keen on his statistics. So statistics likely play a major part in planning, identification of the process of goals. Will data volley be available, and will it create training opportunities for people in Scotland?
Yeah. So again, this is good. These are things that we discussed off the back of. So I suppose to bring this to light for everybody, off the back of the UK Sport post Tokyo funding bid, we used kind of access to world class coaches to look at what and how they were analysing the game, and statistics formed part of that. So for beach volleyball. So your likes of Morph, Kirk Pittman, Steve Tutton in the FIB, they all indicated kind of towards the same points, which were there's certain parts of the game and certain parts of statistical analysis at that very elite level that you would use to essentially benchmark, and use that. So very traditional on the indoor game, at the kind of top level, and then it's now becoming more and more the same for beach. So I would love to kind of put more of that in. The challenge with this on working with Morph on this was at the earlier stages, it's a bit more about working out a philosophy of play than it is simply statistically analysing somebody. And especially if we put them into a competition context. So if I go to my first World Tour event, I'm going to be a low seed, so I'm going to draw a high seed. So the likelihood of that game being statistically elegant, let's say that for want of a better term, is very low, and it's probably not going to give a very good reflection on how I've actually played or how we've functioned as a team. Have we actually done what we said we would do? So there's that element of sometimes statistics can be a bit deceiving, and I think for us in the position that we're at in Scotland for beach performance is we need to maybe look at a level. It's not really lower, it's more to a side of that, which is looking at how do we best create philosophies and ways of playing, and then how do we create frameworks to almost measure players and teams against that before we start judging them against kind of percentage dig rates or percentage efficiency in spike, for example. So 100% stats, 100% I want to bring it in some way or shape, and then listening to the likes of Morph and Kirk is that maybe for us to start off with it's a bit more of a sports science kind of analysis of the game, an analysis of forming philosophies and kind of strategies of playing, and then being able to benchmark against that, and then move into that analysis that maybe Ali's talking about a bit more there.
Okay. Laura McCready's got quite a large question, and I'm not able to read the whole thing. Are we able to bring that up? The whole thing, will it come up? No, it doesn't all come up. Is anybody in the background able to finish off what she said? And also, I've lost Ben off the screen.
I think it's just ultimately asking about the calendar being a problem for the players who are doing both disciplines, and at competition time, how can we maybe solve that problem? Yeah,
so I think, I mean, the honest truth is, I suppose, time. So there was a lot of lessons learned, I guess, from athletes coming from more traditional indoor and then maybe sampling the beach over the last kind of maybe 4 to 6 years. And it's probably had varying success and failure and challenges. So there's that element of time as a country and as volleyballers and as a community and coaches, and we need to be exposed to that. And then I suppose now the biggest opportunity is, as far as the progression from Gold Coast to now, is that you'd hope we're getting these things in earlier. So we're laying down the process, we're laying down the structure earlier than we did before. There's more awareness. So there's likely to be some more clashes because there might be more athletes wanting to engage with this. So I think the best way to do it is that communication piece. So some of it might need to be forced. So it might be a case of having meetings, and it might be a case of using the commissions. So making sure that we best use the coaches commission, the beach commission, the performance management group that will be reinstated. I think having athletes in a position where they know they can come and speak to their coaches. An example there of Ali Jack kind of posing questions in here. Hopefully people can see that even me and Ali will kind of question each other and we'll answer each other. So the athletes are more than welcome to kind of join in those discussions with their indoor coaches, with me whilst I'm in this role, and eventual kind of beach coaches. So I think the challenge will inevitably be there. The best way to manage it is for everybody to feel empowered that they can speak and they can challenge. The last bit to add to that is we probably all need to then allow ourselves a bit of time to reflect on, rather than just making decisions on, oh, well, it's always been like that, or I've always said that, or I've never allowed for that, or I've never done that. We need to kind of, use the past as reference, not residence. I think if we're going to move performance volleyball on in Scotland, we kind of all need to go on the journey together and start kind of moving that forward. Sometimes challenging, sometimes not. Probably some mistakes, but yeah, you've got to be in it to kind of be doing that, and I think that's the beauty of the position Scottish volleyball's in.
There's Yvonne. She's sorry, but don't be, because it's a good question.
Yeah.
How are we looking to transition the sort of senior juniors at the top end of that pathway to a full senior program?
Yeah, so I think this is, and again, if it's beach volleyball, it can be quite a learning curve for a player that's maybe experienced more indoor, where it's kind of like indoor is we make a team, you come together, it's very organized, it's kind of, we do certain events in certain years and it's very laid out, whereas I think sometimes beach can feel a bit more open and a bit more free, which coming from that world of kind of consistent and calendar and getting together and knowing people and big groups, it can be a real challenge then kind of go off into the big wild world of beach volleyball. So I think we need to kind of offer, similar to what we do on the indoor, is offer almost replica programs on the sand, so that you'd be staying in touch with the national team until that kind of young senior, so that maybe like under 23, under 22 age group, and you can still access that kind of guidance or that shaping, even though you might be as a pair going off a bit more in your own direction. You've always got somebody to come back to in Scotland in a national team position or in a governing body position, where they can help shape your decisions and help inform that decision making process, because you need to be autonomous if you're on the sand. You need to kind of build up a lot of these ways of working, but I think it's hard to just expect somebody to be able to do that. So in truth, it would be mirroring similar kind of programs to what we have on the indoor onto the sand. So extending the kind of the national team youth side of things on the sand, and then making sure that there's a community or a group that's built where you know you can go to somebody for support and help and decision making. That would be the way that I think you would best support that transition.
Perfect. We'll get. How are you for time, Ben? Because I know that we did specify a certain amount of time for you with the family. So how are you for time?
No, that's fine. If there's questions coming in, then I'm more than happy to help answer.
I think we've got a couple of questions. I think we've got one question that's stacked up here, and then I'm getting some information on stuff from YouTube. So, do we want to bring up this question from Callum?
Yeah.
And I mean, at the moment, I'm not entirely sure if we've got all the answers for this. Bearing in mind we're still trying to come through the pandemic, but Ben, I think we've all got an inclination of how we would like to see things and how prepared we are to be ready to tackle any issues. So,
yeah,
what are your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, so I think the truth will be is I'll be hoping that we get athletes at a minimum of eight events is that kind of minimum target, because that's that FIVB. That's what's going to make up. So the last thing you would want from any Scottish team come the 31st of March 2022 would be that they don't have 8 boxes on their conveyor belt. They don't have 8 events that they've been to. So that's kind of like in my head, that's a number to target. The Small Countries Association events, there's obviously work to be done there to apply to host and to put on events. But it would be my ambition kind of strategically and tactically, then I would be recommending that we look to host in 2022. And then if there's any option to host again, in 21. And then if there's any opportunity to host again in 2022, then you would look to do that, because there's a maximum of 1 per year as a federation that we can host. So we need to kind of use that wisely and make sure that it's within that window, that 365 kind of window for us. And then, Ireland, Northern Ireland, Wales, if they're hosting events as well, then we'd be looking to send athletes to those in order to get their numbers up. The kind of the extra events, I suppose, would be your the continental representation tournament. Again, we've obviously indicated that we'd like to host that. When you host, you have the ability to kind of say when you would do it. And I know that we would never intentionally make sure that there was clashes with the indoor. There's already a natural kind of position where you can kind of have the indoor season and then the summer season for the sand. So I don't see us having to jeopardize that too much. The likely pinch points are at the end of the indoor season and the start of the next season, if that makes sense. And I think that's where you'd hope we would have enough time to organise that with the athlete, organise that with their club, manage it expectations-wise if it's from an SC point, like Ali's raised, or any other kind of issue that we might have with athletes. If it's Sean and he's still playing abroad and he's got other commitments for his club, for example, there's a whole host of kind of individualised things that we would need to look at. But no, we'd never intentionally put, I don't think, anything in there. And as far as events that we control, we've got that one SCA event that we can do a year. We've got the application to host the continental representation tournament. And then there is an ability to potentially look at hosting an FIVB World Tour event. For me, looking at it tactically, you would look at a level 2, because we would get 3 players in main draw, 3 players in qualification round for hosting. So they'd be the kind of things that we would look at. So hopefully a busy period, but not intentionally clashing with indoor or more than we need to, if that makes sense. Just hopefully the right amounts to push the teams in the right direction.
Great. I think, Ben, it's important for everybody to note that, what we're trying to do here is going to be brand new, and particularly in pandemic, what we previously know about volleyball, it allows us to shape a new direction, which is kind of something that we're seeing here from Adam Payton's question from YouTube. So can we pop that one up on the screen and have a quick look at it? Does this work? Yeah, there we go. So your friend has asked, could we see a move to more equitable split of domestic season, more SVL matches on Sundays, shorter indoor season, so that the beach could be extended to start earlier and end later? He's asking a real good question.
Yeah, you can always trust Adam. I think I suppose this again comes under that natural evolution, which might frustrate him a little bit, because I know he'd like to know probably now, and he'd like to kind of have the answer. But I think the truth would be is, again, coming back to that, the athletes need to drive the why. I think we need to get buy-in from everybody and understanding from everybody, but that this is the performance route that volleyball is choosing. So we're choosing to add beach in, and we're choosing to maximize what it can give, and then we're choosing to maximize the indoor. And it's kind of it's that collaborative work that'll eventually produce consistent qualification or consistent engagement with that performance pathway. So I think it could naturally happen that you could start to see that. I'm not in my position in my role just now. I'm not kind of looking into that. I'm not speaking to Veronica and asking her to change the competition schedules or change any kind of indoor leagues or anything like that in order to suit the beach. It doesn't really work like that. Where the indoor is the traditional, I think, game on the island and in Scotland. And for me, you would never want to disrupt that too much to have beach volleyball in. It's more that recognizing that on a performance front, beach, it has that opportunity right now, and it has that ability to help us profit on an indoor side of the game as well. And it helps us offer something to the athletes as well. There's not many sports that can offer Commonwealth Games to their youth players, to their senior players. So there's a big opportunity there for the volleyball community. It's just about getting that combination and that working together right.
All right. Well, I think we've got through the list of questions here. I'm not seeing any more sitting on YouTube. Martin,
no.
Anything sitting on there?
No, nothing at all.
Right. Okay. So, a lot of quality information, Ben. It's been extremely educational, which is what the main point of this series is. Oh, oh dear. We're almost at a place where we're building a program that's going to develop into the future. It's a really exciting time for us. Obviously, we're delighted that we've been able to sneak you back from Sports Scotland, albeit only on a Wednesday. I mean, it's exciting to have you back. Are you enjoying this work? Is this something that you're really reveling in? And more importantly, how long do we have you? Do you know?
So, well, hopefully we keep going, I think is the truth. I think at the moment there's a review. There'll be a kind of like a review of the work that I've managed to do and we've managed to do as a group in October. So there'll be that review. And then as far as kind of progressing towards 2022, I'll be hoping to kind of stay into that point. And I suppose my ambition with this is to leave enough kind of solid foundations where there's then a good argument to do this again. I think that's the bit that we have to recognize is we need to make this a success in order to kind of keep attracting this engagement. And the work that's been done till now has been good enough and solid enough to keep getting that engagement by Sports Scotland. And again, it's no mean feat to secure funding from national agencies. It's really not. So they've seen something, the governing body done, the athletes that the performances they've put in kind of historically and the work that's going on. So my kind of biggest ambition is that we leave again another solid piece of the puzzle in order for whoever looks at us and looks at the program says, yeah, that's worth further investment and we can keep moving them forward. I do enjoy it. I love it. I love volleyball. It's nice to be back in. I feel like I've learned a lot as well from my role and working with other sports. So it's nice to be able to come back in and try and put that on the ground as such and try and utilize that for volleyball on the island. So yeah, I enjoy it. Wednesdays are long days, but they're good. Always good to see your faces.
Thanks, mate. I like it. All right. Well, listen, we did promise you a bit of a time window here, and once again, the nature of these conversations, we blew it spectacularly. Hopefully, Karen and the family aren't going to haul you over the coals when we come off this call. Ben, it's absolutely fantastic to have you back. Everybody in the office was really buzzing when we were told now the volleyball community, the cat is out of the bag. We're expecting that we'll start to get that flow of emails and that information exchange between the volleyball community and yourself will start to happen. And we can really look forward to the next few months and trying to secure this development, these pieces of the puzzle that you spoke about. We're going to take you off screen. We're going to put you backstage. We'll just wrap it up and then we'll come back and we'll say cheerio to you. So for now, everybody, thanks, Ben Pipes. Thanks, Ben. Martin, what another amazing evening.
Yes, yeah, the gift that keeps giving, Ben Pipes.
I mean, it could only be Adam Payton, Ben Pipe's favourite person, to be finishing up the questions. There was a flurry of questions tonight. Well received information.
Yeah, definitely, it's really good. It's good just to see the engagement out there in beach volleyball as well. And I think what we want to see is more activity on the beaches as well. So performance, as Ben said, the performance outlet is great, but we need to make sure that we've got more people actually getting access to this code as well. So yeah, sun is shining, get out there and play beach.
At the moment, yeah, this is what we're hoping to try and do in terms of our phased approach and the guidance. Yeah, we've got serious plans to move the sport forward, and as we're saying, it's not just eyes on 2022. It's a development plan. We're looking to engage juniors, and hopefully put that pathway and cement it into Scottish volleyball. So. Yeah. Excellent. I'm really excited. The beautiful thing is this information is available to watch back on YouTube and on Facebook Live. If you didn't get enough of it right now between myself, Martin and Ben, you can watch it back. Other than that, we're pushing on to our next engagement, Martin, which is when?
Yeah, so next engagement's on Thursday. This is a 12 o'clock in the afternoon start, just because of the timelines in Australia. So we're very lucky to have the New South Wales Institute of Sport lead dietitian come in to deliver a talk on performance nutrition. So this was something that was engaged to the national team athletes, and this is what they really pushed for, is to get a bit more background into performance nutrition. So we are very lucky to have Sally Walker come and deliver something for us. We get that this is at 12 o'clock and it's not going to suit everyone, but the beauty of Facebook Live is that you get to watch it back. So it's something that you can take something from and you can digest it in your own time.
Oh, very good way to end there, Martin. Very good way, bravo, sir. Yeah, I'm excited for that. That is, it's another amazing achievement from yourself being able to pull in that caliber of person to deliver to our community. So I'm excited for it. Again, it's a different time to deliver. Hopefully we get people that will engage with it at that time. I'm excited for it. It'll be quality information. So
yeah, definitely. It's that one thing that people talk about, is that the nutrition is that 1% extra. So if everyone's getting that information, they're getting educated on that nutrition, then that's a real big bonus for all these people who've got potential for Commonwealth Games or Youth Commonwealth Games, things like that.
Yeah. Perfect. All right, well, let's get off the screen.
Yes, I think we want to mention next week, don't we, Andy?
Oh, we definitely do. I mean, I'm excited about that as well.
Yeah. So Tuesday night, we're extremely lucky. 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock, we have the world #1 beach volleyball player, and Melissa.
Sorry, just say that again.
World #1 beach volleyball player. This is a steal for us to get Melissa on screen. Access for all the Scottish athletes to probe into her, how she managed to get to being world #1. But also she's willing to ask questions on her specifics, what she's extremely talented at, obviously. Not just all the game, but her best setter, best defender in the world. So I think it's good to get some little bits of technical information from Melissa as well on what she does in her process.
Wow.
And then followed by a legend of Scottish volleyball next Thursday night, we have Mark McGivern, who's going to do a talk about his journey from his days at things like Team 5 all the way through to Olympics, and then being a pro volleyball for over 10 years, which
no mean feat.
We can't ask for any better than that.
I mean, like, we just keep putting these great chats together. I know that it's something that the membership are hopefully enjoying. I know that we're enjoying putting them out there. The lineup this month is absolutely incredible. Again, we're breaking new ground in this COVID pandemic. We're putting on quality experiences for our members. I'm delighted that we've got that caliber of person. So lots to look forward to. Social media is going to be out there in terms of when and where you can catch these chats. We hope to see you viewing along with us. And from me, it's good night.
Yep, and good night for me.